that I'm extremely passionate about and look to promote as much as I can in all of my designs. I'm also part of an international observatory group for inclusion. This is basically a continuous learning working group whereby I meet bi-monthly with other Proludic members from different countries, which include Australia, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy. And the sole purpose of this group is to better our knowledge and understanding of inclusion by working with external charities and groups, for example, such as Autism UK and Nova Child. We try to learn from each other's shared experiences. And, we look to implement our learning through the design of our equipment and play space design. So today, I would just like to run over some of the points that we're going to cover. The first section will be understanding what inclusion actually is. And then we'll look to some facts and figures about disability in the UK and what these actually mean. And then we will look to want to try and understand some of the different impairments and understand them a little bit better, and then highlight some of the needs of the different disabled users with some possible solutions and positive outcomes through product selection. We will then look at some design tips and then some real life project examples where we've put theory of inclusion into practice. And then finally, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So yeah, first and foremost, I want to, for the very first part, throw this back out to you guys in the webinar. I'd like to ask all of you to please type a couple of words or a quick sentence about what inclusion means to you in the chat bar. If everyone knows where the chat bar is. Okay, brilliant. We've got accessibility for all, access for all, accessibility, no child is left out from play, play for everyone, safe and exciting play space for all, ensuring no one's left out, equal opportunity, equality of access. Yep, all of these are fantastic points and all aid towards making a play area more inclusive. So that's fantastic, and it's great that we're all pretty much on the same lines, and that's a fantastic starting point. So thank you guys for your input on that. So yeah, we are going to look at what inclusion actually is. So the Oxford Dictionary refers to inclusion as the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalised, such as those with who have physical or intellectual disabilities. I think the diagram on the screen really helps to demonstrate what inclusion is. The image on the left shows what can happen if we don't get inclusion right. It may be that the whole site isn't accessible, or perhaps we pick equipment that is too specialised. For example, a wheelchair swing. You can see that the play area actually becomes segregated. It means that there's a defined space that users with disabilities can or can't use. And as a result, cohesion between abilities isn't actually present within the play area. However, if we look at the image on the right, it helps to demonstrate what a truly inclusive play area hopes to achieve. It shows integration between all users of all abilities. Therefore, I think it's important that inclusive design isn't just a concept, but it's something that should be really put into practice. And it stands for a real kind of commitment to develop products that are appropriate, but never segregating in how they are used or perceived. So now I want to look at kind of why we create inclusive spaces. So first and foremost, it opens the space to a wider community of users. I mean, this should be, I mean, we all believe that play areas should be accessible to all users within a community. So obviously this is a prime reason for doing that. It helps acceptance and understanding that there are similarities and differences between people. And we believe there's no better time to teach young children this, as it helps with acceptance and cohesion, that people are different. There are differences and similarities between children. And, like we say, no better place to start teaching young children this. Inclusive play areas, they offer more varied play activities based on stimulating different senses. Again, all of these help towards helping child development, both mentally and physically. For children, there's a positive sense of self-esteem, and positive reinforcement of their sense of identity. I feel, again, this is a really important point, as it helps demonstrate children, appreciate that they may look different, analyze or move differently, but at the same time, it allows them to be proud of their differences. It also enables children to develop at their own pace and within their own capabilities. So it allows a sense of self-taught development as well. And also it reduces the feeling of being forgotten or left out, again, which I think is a really important point nowadays in helping in terms of sense of mental health, not only for children, but also with adults as well. So now we're going to look at some facts and figures as to why inclusivity is so important when designing play spaces. So I've picked out, there are a number of facts and figures being taken from government reports between 2000 and the present day. But I've picked out some of the key elements from those facts and figures and related it back to designing some inclusive play spaces. So firstly, there are 16.4 million disabled people living in the UK. This means it forms a massive part of society. So it's really important that we understand and adapt to it, not only to be an ethical business, but also to make sure we reach out and can include as many users as possible when designing our open spaces. 9% of children are disabled. So that means, if you think about it, nearly 1 in 10 children have a form of disability. So again, we really need to ensure that we're catering for these children in our spaces. I think a really kind of striking fact is less than 8% of disabilities require the use of a wheelchair. However, over 50% of people think of a disability as a physical impairment. So as a company, and industry, we need to do more to educate people on other forms of disability, to move away from this common misconception. And then, 37% of disabled children have a social or cognitive impairment. Therefore, understanding the needs of children with mental or cognitive disorders is very important, so that we provide areas that cater for these needs. There are 4.2 million disabled people living in poverty, of which 320,000 of them are children. I feel like this is a really important fact, because this group are potentially at the highest risk of exclusion due to things such as cost, travel, and access. Therefore, it's so important that we provide excellent, free, inclusive play provisions that are accessible to those most at risk. And then another really important point is that less than 50% of play areas in the UK are currently accessible. It means that we must do something to aid in the design of the new play spaces and to make sure that we make them as accessible as possible. So then, obviously, at the start of the presentation, I mentioned I will take you through some of the different forms of disability. Now, we recognise that all disabilities are different here, but in order to make this a little bit easier to understand and demonstrate, we've grouped them into some different categories. So during the next few slides, I'll pick out a few specific features of the form of disability, the requirements for those users, and then some possible solutions. However, if you wish to look at these more closely or have a specific need, I will be more than happy to pick up with you offline. So we're going to start with sensory impairment. So this is defined as when one or more of your senses are no longer functioning as they should be. This includes sight, smell, sound, touch, and taste. And that, as a result of sensory disabilities, other senses are often heightened. This means to compensate for the loss of sight, for example, users rely more heavily on hearing, touch, and smell. Therefore, including elements that promote these other senses should be explored when designing inclusive play spaces. I think one of the biggest issues with sensory disability is that it's difficult to manage interactions with the surrounding environment. So this means that there is a requirement for the need to touch, hear, or sense bright colours in order to help understand what is around them. So to combat this, we need to provide sound emitting items, tactile elements, and often utilise bright colours that will help identify or give indications of shapes, sizes, weights, and textures, for example. In terms of sound generating items, we can implement things like musical items. We can have talk tubes, we can have play panels. Also a number of tactile elements that can be incorporated. These include using braille, using different types of material that could be soft, hard, patterned, flexible. We could also incorporate changing textures and feel into our surfacing options by using different types of surfacing. We could create a sensory pathway using different materials in the ground. So you could have cobbles, you could have, bricks, you could have flat, smooth textures, you could have timber, just to give a different play experience and texture when moving around the play space. Another key feature is that some people have a limited spatial awareness. Again, this is all tied to the above. However, it also means we need to think about how we actually lay our sites out. We need to allow for areas to be a little bit more open and not overcrowded, and allow ease of access between items of equipment. So we spoke about some of the needs of children that have sensory disabilities, and here you can see how we can marry up those needs in product design. So here we have our sensory flowers. They're very vibrant in colour, which helps stimulate children's visual capacity. They move and spin, allowing for tactile play. They emit sound as they stand up, as they are spun, and they stand at a height that means they can be accessed by wheelchair users. So, adding products similar to this would be a fantastic way of, reaching out to those that do have sensory impairments. We could offer elements such as perspex windows or on units or on individual play panels, because it will distort how children can see the play area, and it offers visual stimulation, obviously. So if you can include them on a multiplayer unit, it can offer visual stimulation, but perhaps with a change of perspective instead of being at ground level. So now we're going to come on to motor disabilities. So motor impairment is defined as the partial or total loss of function of a body part, usually a limb or limbs. This may result in muscle weakness, poor stamina, lack of muscle control, or even total paralysis. Therefore, it's a specific feature is a lack or reduced mobility. This means that we must provide equipment that compensates for this, effectively letting the body experience what it wouldn't normally be able to. We should look to include items that focus on swinging, rocking, or rotating. Another really important feature for people with motor disabilities is feeling the body held safely. It's important that we recognise this because we need to include equipment that features wide seats, for example, or a bowl shape to allow natural retention, handrails on units to allow for ease or aid in access onto a unit. And all of these elements help a user feel secure on a piece of equipment. Another key consideration is having access to equipment. So we need to ensure that it's safe, level, and wide enough for users of wheelchairs and mobility scooters, as well as pushchairs. So, a prime example would be, we get called to sites whereby, there's a need for an inclusive piece of play equipment, but the play area is situated in the middle of a field, and there's no pathway to link from a car park or an access into the field to the actual play space. So it's thinking about access on a wider level. And also, if we're not utilising ride-on accessible equipment, we need to make sure we're including items that have a safe and easy method of transfer. For example, having items that sit at wheelchair transfer height, such as spinning bowls or basket swings, they're great to add into a play space also. Again, we mentioned we want to allow access for all users. So thinking about products that have multiple access routes, demonstrated by this Diablo unit, would be, a quick win. For those that cannot leave the wheelchair, you have your ramped access that allows access onto the unit. Although it's not a huge incline, it still gives a different perspective of the play space and allows users to play with their friends and siblings on an actual play item. Alongside this, we've also included step access with several handlebars and low-level hand grips to allow other users to support themselves up onto the top deck. And there's also an inclusive double-width slide that allows parents and carers the opportunity to slide down with their child. And then another really important and quick win here is having lots of tactile elements inbuilt into a multiplayer unit. They often sit at wheelchair height that allow for different play values on the unit. And you can see there's a number of them on this unit. So again, we talked about having access onto items of equipment that actually produce a felt play value. So we mentioned rocking, swinging, and rotating. This unique item allows wheelchair users a new opportunity to engage in play that they might not have experienced before. This product allows up to 2 wheelchair users the opportunity to play, rock, and bounce alongside 6 friends at the same time. The great thing about this piece of equipment is you don't need 2 wheelchairs in order for the unit to work, as shown in the image on the screen. Just to demonstrate how seriously we take inclusion, I thought it'd be worth noting that the product design team at our head office engaged with a charity organisation called Le Petit Soin. And as a result, we worked on the design and testing phase of this product with a little girl called Clemence, who heavily relies on a wheelchair on a day-to-day basis, giving us a real insight into how she would use the item, but then how we can actually make it work for a wheelchair user. Okay, so now we're going to look at sensory overload and cognitive disabilities. I'm going to play or attempt to play a video that helps demonstrate what a child with learning disabilities or autism might face on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully it plays okay. If it doesn't and you'd like to see the video, we can send it to you offline and separately for you to watch after the webinar. So fingers crossed this works.
Six, 7, 8, 9. Take my hand.
No, Alex. It's fine, isn't it? It's fine.
I'm not naughty. I'm autistic. And I just get too much information.
So now that we've watched that video and hopefully it worked for you guys, I think it's fair to say it changed my perception of what someone with a cognitive disability, and what they actually go through on a daily basis. So if we look at what cognitive disability is defined as, it's a term used when a person has certain limitations in terms of mental functioning and in skills such as communicating, taking care of themselves, and social skills. Some specific features of cognitive disabilities are that social interaction could be very difficult. There may be a fear of others, and contact as a result isn't spontaneous. Therefore, there is a real need for items of play that allow for opportunities for group play, but also can be used individually, thus avoiding a sense of competition. We also need to provide the ability to perform simple but stimulating activities. We can include play opportunities that have challenge and progression inbuilt, so it's progressive. And there may be a high sensitivity to colours, and these colours could give different internal signals. So we could use a variety of different colours as visual stimulators within a play space. And there may also be a bit of difficulty managing emotions, especially in busy areas, as we saw from the video, which showed hypersensitivity to everyday surroundings. So we could also incorporate sensory areas into designs. These sensory areas are fantastic for children who suffer, who have autism, and it gives them a quiet space where they can feel comfortable if the hustle and bustle of the play area gets a bit too much. In a nutshell, it means that children with autism need a variety of different sensory inputs in the same way a neurotypical person has a physical need for food and sleep. So again, we talked about some of the needs of people with a cognitive disability. So if we look at this product example, the Play Hut, it provides a quiet space where children can take a break away from the main play space, activities, but still be within the periphery of play. It allows wheelchair access, so it allows, again, access for all users. There are tactile elements that are built into the unit to offer different play values. And I think, again, really importantly, there's actually no prescribed way of playing with a unit like this. So there's no right or wrong outcomes. It can be used as somewhere to take a quick break if a child wants a bit of alone time. But it can also be used for imaginative play and, can be used by groups or individuals. So you can tick off a lot of boxes with items such as play huts. We've also got our pixel drawing panel, and it's great as there's no right or wrong solution when playing on this unit. And this is one of many different sensory play panels that are available out there. It sits at wheelchair height to allow access for all users. The balls spin to show either a black or green colour, which then allow you to create imagery within the unit. It's also very therapeutic for children who find the repetitive motion of spinning the balls comforting. So again, a really fantastic unit to include on designs. So very much like the seesaw that we've showed you earlier, we also wanted to develop an item with full access for wheelchair users, however, having a high level of imaginative play, allowing for users to experience different play values, thus reaching out to as many users as possible. And I feel like our inclusive Jeep does exactly that. It has a retractable wheelchair and pushchair access ramp and includes several different tactile elements within the unit. It also balances on springs off the ground, so any movement on the unit creates a rocking and bouncing movement on the Jeep, which helps to create a more, a real life jungle or safari experience for children. Again, another fantastic way of incorporating inclusive design into a play space and having multiple play values inbuilt into a unit. So what does inclusive design look like? So I'm now going to kind of run through a few different live project examples we've completed over the past few years. And the first one is the Daisy Chain project up in Stockton-on-Tees. The Daisy Chain are a unique charity that address the needs of children on the autism spectrum and their families. They wanted to provide a sensory area. They did have a substantial budget, but the development needed to provide an opportunity for families to experience a genuine safe sense of adventure within a safe environment. And because this was a SEND client, we decided to create lots of different areas within the play space to help create different zones that they wanted to achieve. These included an adventure area, as you can see towards the bottom, and themed, a sand area for a change of texture, and then a sensory breakaway area also. And here you can see that users can access the site throughout through clear pathways and clearly defined routes of access in and out of the area. And again, you can kind of see that in these photos of the finished site. So again, we've got an enclosed safe space, but we've still got equipment positioned nice and spaced out to create easy access and movement in and around the units. You've got your sensory play and different textures within the sand play. And you've got lots of clear access routes, again, as we've discussed. We've now come on to Clapham Common. This is a project we did, I think, a year ago. And the project brief for Clapham was to transform the old dated play area into a vibrant space for local users, but in particular, making it fully inclusive so that the area is catered for all ages and abilities. I'm just, again, hopefully I'm going to share a video with you. It helps bring the site to life and give you a bit of an insight into kind of some of the activities and kind of the thought process that went into designing the area.
So my thoughts are basically, as you come in, what I love is the doors are very colourful, very bright, very accessible. They're very wide. You can open them and they stay open. Wheel the wheelchair in. It's nice that they've got areas where wheelchairs can ride up and you're able to play with the actual activities and the toys around. Being able to play with the activities where I'm able to roll up his wheelchair when his knees are feeling quite weak so that we can enjoy the park and be inclusive like every other child that's here, so he doesn't miss out on the opportunity of having a fun day out. He's still involved, he's still enjoying himself, and he's able to not only interact with the other children but interact with the park itself. Having access to a park which has accessible activities is extremely important for us, because he gets to enjoy all the activities like every other child, and at the same time he's doing his physical exercise, which is making him strong, and he's happy at the same time because he's able to use all the equipment quite freely.
So that was our video kind of case study for Clapham Common. We now come on to another project. This was a project that was completed in France, but I wanted to showcase it to you to demonstrate that we really are and truly are a global company trying to implement inclusivity as one of our core beliefs. The brief for this project, it was in the city of Vannes, and they wanted to create a heavily inclusive play space accessible to all users. In the end, it was made up of 3 spaces that create the sky, land, and sea. And it was connected by a metre-wide sensory trail. It encompasses 750 square metres of play area, and it contains 30 play pieces of equipment with 50 different playing activities. And it's actually the largest inclusive play area ever constructed in Western France. We do actually have another video on this, and if you'd like to see it, I can point you in the direction of it after the webinar. And then a final project example is one we installed this year. It's at Pennington Flash up in Wigan. It was designed to blend in with the natural surroundings. The play area, it boasted a variety of wildlife-inspired attractions suitable for children up to the age of 11. It included equipment modelled on the local wildlife, so ducks, swans, and other birds. And it was all designed to make the user connect further with the reserve and provide educational context in terms of the wildlife that can be found in and around the Flash. And, you know, we were inspired by Pennington Flash itself as a place and wanted to include elements that would reflect its natural beauty and to help teach children about the diversity of wildlife in its wonderful habitat. So many well-known local birds will be found hiding throughout the play space, making use of our unique web adventure game, which again I can talk about if anyone's interested in. It's almost like a scavenger hunt type game that's easily implemented within the play space. And also our inclusive range offered a lot of equipment that makes use of materials that complement the surrounding environment. And some of the new additions included a wheelchair seesaw and a wheelchair roundabout. There's multiple trampolines, and it's important to not forget children that do not have a disability. So we still wanted a real wow factor piece and managed to achieve that with our one of our Origin bespoke towers as the main focal point. There are also lots of different changes in level used throughout the site through mounding and equipment selection. And there's also a clear route of access designed through the site, as you can see on the next image. So now we're going to kind of come on to a bit of a design summary and some key considerations. You know, when designing play spaces, equipment and layout have always kind of been intended to create a positive interaction between each play element and a child, but it also helps create a positive interaction between children, but also between the child and his or her environment, as we mentioned, you know, with Pennington Flash. So it's essential to provide a community space that meets the needs of all, addressing age, gender, and physical ability. So we're not saying the journey to inclusion is easy. It's just we have to avoid doing it half right. You know, we need to think holistically when we're designing the play space. And therefore, you know, as mentioned, we've listed a few key considerations or kind of quick wins to help, you know, when you're designing your own inclusive play space. So the first point is to provide a clear route through the playground, but that also includes up to the playground. It means that we're providing access for all users, no matter whether they're in a pushchair, mobility scooter. You know, you got to think about potential grandparents getting to site as well. And, you know, I mentioned the play area in the middle of a field with no access path. How can a mobility scooter, a wheelchair, or a pushchair get across that in, you know, the winter? They're going to struggle. Another quick consideration, a quick win, is having a variety of accessible high points. These could be landscape mounds, decks, or climbing units. And it allows users to have a different perspective of the play space, seeing it from a different view and a different angle, and getting a sense of height, perhaps, you know, with large tower units. Incorporating sensory play, you know, think about offering visual, sound, and tactile opportunities. I think this is probably one of the most accessible types of play equipment and is really easily achieved without blowing budgets on play areas. So it's something that could be quite easily implemented, and, you know, as a result, really should be. Have a highly accessible moving item is another key consideration. So we discussed, you know, roundabouts, seesaws, trampolines, including an item that a wheelchair user will be able to experience and feel a play value. I think it's very important. And locating equipment in easy reach of entrance points and access routes, again, it's a bit of a kind of similar point to the first point, but again, it shows how important that actually is. Then I'm going to come on to a few other considerations. So again, still providing challenge to be inclusive for those that do not have a disability. Again, it's really important that we don't focus everything on disability. We need to cater for children that don't have a disability, that need potentially more challenge and to experience more risk. So we need to ensure that that's also included in our play space design. We need to offer different textures in the play space. Again, we mentioned that could be done through surfacing types. It could be done through material of equipment. It could be done through sensory pathways, you know, tactile kind of touching different materials. Creating quiet areas as well, you know, that have gentle sensory experiences that can benefit children who need time away, or just in general, you know, creating a breakout area perhaps. Again, you know, really important, as mentioned, for children that have kind of cognitive disabilities. And then on multiplayer units, instead of just having a multiplayer unit that has, you know, access on and a slide down, perhaps, you know, incorporate slightly larger multiplayer units that have different play panels inbuilt into the unit, have different kind of visual stimulators. You know, we saw in the video a set of binoculars or a periscope. You know, encourage different visual stimulators in that way. You can use perspex, as we mentioned earlier. There are a number of different ways that you can inbuilt kind of different player values onto one unit to kind of, you know, offer as much player value as possible. So I just wanted to share this slide with you before we kind of go on to the kind of question and answers session. But we wanted to take it a step further. You know, not only do we strive to create inclusive play spaces, but we also engage with inclusive organisations as well to allow for inclusion in the workplace. When you see kind of these symbols in our new and up and coming inclusive brochure, which should be available early next year, when you see these symbols, you will see that the equipment has been assembled using the inclusive process, helping the professional integration of individuals with disabilities. And I kind of wanted to show this to you, as I feel it's almost an excellent way of closing the circle off when it comes to inclusion. You know, we understand that although it shouldn't be, it is often a lot harder for disabled adults to get full-time employment. Therefore, as a company, during our manufacturing process, we engage in workshops that allow disabled people the opportunity to work and help assemble some of our parts. An example of this is the pixel panel that I showed you earlier. the balls are constructed and fixed in place during one of these workshops. So yeah, hopefully, this shows you how seriously we take inclusion. And it's not just in terms of creating inclusive play spaces, but very much taking a holistic approach as a company, to strive to be as inclusive as possible. So yeah, thank you for your time, and yeah, we can open up the floor to some questions